Remember to press *1 to get put in the queue, and please direct your questions to one of the panelists. We're also taking questions through the Mars helicopter hashtag. To start, we have Marcia Dunn from the Associated Press.
If Flight 4 takes off today as planned, when will Flight 5 be? And am I correct in understanding that the helicopter is going to have 30 sols on top of the first 30 sols for operations, which would take potential flights into the beginning of June? And how far can these two vehicles be apart and still be able to communicate? And will the new airfields be along the rover's path? Thank you.
I can start. Yes. So first, yes, is 30 sols beyond the initial 30 sols. So and the vehicles can be apart up to 1 kilometer or even further. As Bob mentioned, the signal-to-noise ratio is extremely good. So we can go even beyond 1 kilometer distance. So in terms of Flight 4, and then the timing to Flight 5. Flight 4 is, first of all, bold. Okay, it's going to be a 266 meters round trip. And then after it lands, we are going to be processing these 60 black and white images to generate these three-dimensional digital elevation maps. And then based on that, make the decision on where Flight 5 will go. So the timing between Flight 4 and 5 will be longer than usual. Instead of the 3-day cadence, it will be close to another week before we attempt Flight 5.
Thanks. And Marcia, you had several questions. Did you have another one you'd like to get answered?
Let me just, I'm sorry, I've got all this, I got to mute my audio. I think that answers it. So you'll be having tests through June. Oh, and will the flight path, will you be sort of trying to find airfields along the route of the rover, or will the rover sort of be trying to tag along where the helicopter is going? Who's leading who here? Thank you.
Oh, absolutely. The rover is primary going forward. So yes, we'll be working with Jennifer and Ken extremely closely. And in fact, not just even the path, even the kinds of products that we want to prioritize. So yes, definitely a shift from our 30 days of being spoiled, Jennifer, to now, yes, we will be on, working with the convenience of the rover.
Thank you, Mimi. Up next, we have Kenneth Chang with the New York Times.
Didn't enter flight mode. I understand that from testing, it didn't. Your fix that you had didn't work about 15% of the time. I was just wondering what sort of conditions lead you not to enter flight mode. And I was also wondering, there was talk about trying to get sound of the helicopter. I was wondering what the status of that was. Thank you.
I'm not sure I heard the question. It was a little chopped up there.
Oh, sure. Kenneth, could you repeat your question, please?
Oh, sure. Yesterday's attempt to do the flight didn't enter flight mode. From ground testing, I know about 15% of the time your fix that you had did not work. I was wondering what were the specifics of the conditions that lead it not to work. And I was also wondering what the status was of trying to get sound of the helicopter.
Yeah, let me talk to the going into flight mode question. So we had a choice of two, possible ways to fix it. One was a software fix, which would have taken a little bit longer to get onto the aircraft. And the other one was this sort of little bit of a random touching of the registers, if you will, that would flip the mode, good 80% of the time. We chose that path because it was the most expedient path and it didn't disturb the existing software, which otherwise has been doing extremely well. And it's just a matter of timing. There is a bug, that this is a workaround for the bug. And we're exploiting some slight idiosyncrasies in the timing of the way the computers talk to each other to sort of fool the system into being okay and accepting the transition to flight mode. So that was the sort of the trick. It worked out perfectly well, 3 times. And yesterday it didn't quite work, and we'll see today whether we got past that little block. But it was a known way of doing it, and it was quite successful. So we're quite happy with it. But as this days proceed, we might, choose to get the more permanent fix, into the system, so we don't have to play this dice game every time we try to fly. And then there was a second part of that question, which I've forgotten.
About the status of getting sound. Do you want to talk about that, Jennifer? He's saying, what is the status of getting sound from the flight?
Yeah, I can just briefly say, we did a characterization test earlier in the week where we were running the cameras and the SuperCam microphone and the radios, and that worked. So we are going to attempt to get sound from flight number 4.
Okay, thank you. And up next, we have Paul Brinkman from United Press International.
Safe and all systems are functioning well. I was wondering if you could just talk about your best estimate right now as to how long Ingenuity could remain functional in this, given what you've learned.
Yeah. Let me take that one. So right now, Ingenuity is healthy, but it wasn't really designed for a long mission. So all the parts that are there in the system have not gone through a validation of, how many freeze and thaw cycles they can go through before something breaks. The number of commercial parts which were not explicitly designed for the space environment. So the expectation is that at some point, with enough thermal cycling, something will, a solder joint or something will snap. But that said, there are no consumables on this helicopter. The only consumable, if you will, is our landing gear, which is probably good up to 100 landings. And as you can be seeing in all the videos, we really haven't been stressing the landing gear at all. Everything else is just a function of, energy availability. There is dust in the atmosphere that will build up as the months progress, but right now is a good time to fly, and we'll probably be good from an energy perspective, at least for a few months. And if the luck holds out as far as the parts go, we should survive all those freeze-thaw cycles and be okay.
Thank you, Bob. And we have a social media question coming in. It's on Twitter from Headcrab Zombie. Asks, 3 flights so far. What has been your biggest surprise?
Well, I think the surprise has been on the positive aspect. The data that we're seeing, what Bob showed, and to quote, some of the team members directly, it's been just phenomenal. Just the currents and the voltages and, and the flight performance have been exactly the way we have seen in our tests here on Earth. And that is, Bob, when you say that is a super surprise, because we've planned on the first 3 flights with the 2 contingency flights to make up for surprises and differences, in our models, any unknowns that we would have had, and that's what those extra 2 flights for, and we have not had to use it. We've been able to wrap up in 3 flights.
Yeah, I think technical performance has been fantastic, and that is, exceeding all our expectations. I think we had in our mind that there would be some issues on that level, and we'd have to work with them. But the only issue we had was the little gremlin that prevented us from going into flight mode. And in a way, that it was very satisfying to see all of this great performance come after we sort of got past that hiccup. So it's the other thing that I think surprised me a little bit is that we're actually getting very good visibility into what's happening inside the helicopter. I mean, we knew we planned it and we designed for it. But I always had this fear that we'd get to Mars and not be able to get all the data we wanted and not get that visibility into what's happening. We get a lot of visibility here when we test here on Earth because we're highly instrumented in our test chambers. But thanks to Perseverance's videos, thanks to the sheer data volume that they're able to process through all the orbiters back to Earth, we're getting so much data, and that's been a very pleasant surprise that essentially everything we've asked for from an engineering sense, all the data we've been getting, the performance has been superb. And all the contingencies we worried about, not surviving the night, not having enough energy, solar panels, perhaps not working as well as expected, all of those things have just gone away, and it's been working exceedingly well.
Great, and up next we have Bill Harwood from CBS News.
Yeah, hi guys. The 30-day op demo that you're getting ready to embark upon, is that a firm line in the sand? In other words, if you're still fully operational, is there any chance that you could extend farther, or will that be it? And when you get to the end of that 30 days, or wherever the end comes, what's your plan for the helicopter? Do you park it somewhere and Perseverance drives away, or is there anything else you could do? Thanks.
Lori, do you want to answer part of that question?
Sure, I'd like to take part of it. Hi, Bill. Thank you for the question. So we're, as a demonstration in the operational demo mode that we're going to move into after the 4th and 5th flight, we're going to kind of see how it goes phase. So we're going to watch the performance. We're going to see the kind of data products that we can get back and see how the two flight systems work with each other. With Perseverance taking the lead and being very focused on its science. And after that 30-sol period, we'll assess where we are. We'll see where we are. We'll check on the health of the helicopter. We'll see how if it's being helpful to Perseverance, or if there are impacts to the ability of Perseverance to do its core science jobs. And we'll assess the whole picture and see where we are at that time. So there is a potential to go beyond, but we'll have to assess it after 30 days. And then, I don't know if Jennifer or Mimi want to take the second half of the question.
Go ahead, Mimi, if you want.
Oh, absolutely. I think we gauge as we go. Again, a reminder, Ingenuity was built and tested for 30 days of operation. So I think, as Bob reminded, we really do expect some finite life. And so it'll be a race, between how long these parts surprise us in surviving. And also in doing these operational scenarios, we will naturally be pushing the limits of Ingenuity. We will be flying over unsurveyed terrains, and over time, continuing to transfer to airfields that are not well characterized. So there's a higher probability of bad landing. So, definitely we see how we go forward.
Yeah, and I'll just add, there are lots of different ideas about how this might end and what the final flight might be, and we've all talked about it many times. But as we go through, our objective here is just to evaluate every month and see how it's going, and then determine what the next steps are. So we're not really ready to say what the final step would be, because we're taking it incrementally at this point.
Thanks for your answers. Up next, we have Lisa Grossman with Science News.
Hi, all. Thank you for taking my question. This is probably for Mimi. I was wondering if you could anthropomorphize the helicopter a little bit. Now that you've gotten to know it, does it have a personality? What's its relationship with Perseverance like? And if you were Ingenuity, how do you think you'd feel at this moment?
Wow. Okay. So Ingenuity, my summary, Ingenuity loves Mars. That's just, we have been shocked and just, you see the flights, right? It takes off, and I almost feel the freedom that it feels, no longer tethered like Bob was describing with, test cables or stuck in a chamber, and I really feel Ingenuity loves Mars. And Perseverance, as I mentioned, has been the ultimate spoiler, just spoiling Ingenuity all this time. So that's how I really see it. And Ingenuity loves Mars.
Great, thank you. The ultimate Mars duo. Up next is Joey Roulette from The Verge.
Hey, thank you. Bill Harwood kind of asked my question, but I wanted to, expand a little bit. If things go really well in this new operational demonstration phase, are you guys hoping that you can transition or that it'll graduate again into some more operational capability, or what are you guys hoping for that? And how many flights are scheduled for that phase? Thanks.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and answer that. So initially, in the first 30 sols, we'll probably, after Flight 5, we'll get 1 or 2 flights, and then we'll evaluate. I think we are hoping that we can operate Ingenuity in a not to interfere basis with the science mission in a way that, as long as it's available and alive, that we'll be able to continue in a way and learn more things, likely, again, as I mentioned, because Ingenuity is a tech demo helicopter that wasn't designed for a long mission. It wasn't designed with a hazard avoidance landing system. It wasn't necessarily designed to do an operational reconnaissance for a rover. But as we move forward, we'll evaluate how it's doing, and we would like to, on a not to interfere basis, as long as we can keep going with the sampling, we'd like to continue that if we can. But again, we're evaluating on 30 sol increments just to make sure we understand what's going on and how it's proceeding.
Okay, thank you. And up next, we have a question on social media. Jim on Facebook asks, are there plans to test max altitude possibilities? Bob?
Yeah, so right now we have found that the 5-meter altitude is a sweet spot for us to be. It gives us good resolution on the ground with our downward-facing nav camera. So when we do these map transects back and forth, it's a good place to be. We can see rocks and hazards and things, especially if you're picking a new landing site, that's good. But as part of this, providing utility to the rover, I wouldn't be surprised if at some particular location we are asked to go to a higher vantage point, like let's say 10 meters, and do a look around and provide some panoramic type imagery that might be useful to either the rover operators or the scientists. But for the normal sort of transect map making, the 5 meters altitude has proved to be a good place to be.
Thanks, Bob. And up next we have Gina Sunseri from ABC News.
Mimi, as you watch Ingenuity fly, are you taking notes for a possible successor, what you would do differently?
Oh, yes. As we watch, the engineering data really has been examined and combed through by the entire team in the background. So absolutely on, what is the attitude and deviations from the predicted curves to the differences, those are being watched very carefully by our chief pilot, for our, the operations lead, and folks looking at the batteries and the temperatures. And so far, we haven't had to make any variations, but yes, our downlink procedure, downlink data review process is quite detailed, looking at many engineering products to examine the actual detailed health of the vehicle. But so far, we haven't had to make any adjustments.
And then up next is Steve Gorman from Reuters. Steve, can you hear us? All right, up next, we will try to get back to Steve, is Issam Ahmed from AFP.
Oh, hi. I think Steve was, should I just go ahead? Hello?
Hello, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you. Yeah, my question was asked, so I'll ask a different one. How much, I understand you're going into a wait-and-see phase and seeing if you can sort of integrate these two missions together and have Ingenuity contribute to the science. But I was wondering how much of a factor is the sort of public excitement around Ingenuity in this decision? Because obviously it's a really cute image to imagine these two robots, exploring Mars together. And is that actually a factor in your decision-making?
Lori, you can take
I can take I'll take the first part, which is that, yes, Ingenuity is cute and it's fun and it's got an incredible public outreach, capacity. But in all honesty, this is really based on the science of perseverance. And so what I'd really like for Ken to also add to this, because we wouldn't even be talking about this if the science team hadn't made the decisions that they had. I mean, they're driving the show. Once we complete the 30 sol technology demonstration, we're really serious business on getting down to the preparations for taking those first samples in Jezero Crater. And so it was the science team that was really focused on the science they wanted to do, and when they established what their science plan was, realized that there was an enabling opportunity here. So I'd like Ken to expand on that if he can, please.
Yeah, sure. To repeat some things that we heard earlier, but to really drive home the point, the challenge that we foresaw originally with the helicopter and the science mission is that we thought we would be doing an intensive drive campaign in which the helicopter would not be able to keep up, literally because it needs to recharge between flights and because we have the ability to drive very quickly. We could get out of range. Based on the rocks that we have seen in the area, we really wish to spend a considerable amount of time where we are. And so it's sort of a fortuitous alignment of these two things. But it's also worth pointing out in maybe a more clear way, Mimi talked about the support that she's gotten from the Perseverance rover and the Perseverance team. And that has come at the expense of being able to do full-blown science. And so now that we're moving into this additional demonstration phase, we really do have to see whether it is possible to carry out the science mission and support the helicopter simultaneously. And that's why we're going to do this operational demonstration test, just to see how it works.
Great, thank you. And up next, we have Chelsea Goad from space.com.
Hi, my question is for probably Mimi and Jennifer. You mentioned that with the ops demo, Ingenuity will likely fly one or more times than the 5 times slated for the tech demo. How many flights are you expecting for the ops demo? And if this addition will perhaps hinder in any way Perseverance's science mission, as we know, previously the tech demo had the rigid timeline because Perseverance had to go and begin its sampling mission. So it seems that that's changed quite a bit, and so I'm just curious what those expectations are.
Okay, yeah. So let me expand a little bit on the support that Perseverance provides for Ingenuity, and a few things I think I mentioned, but one I forgot to, that will make the support a little bit easier for Perseverance. One of the things that we are doing, so within the next 30 sols, within the extended or the ops demo 30 sols, I expect we would fly 1 or 2 times with the Ingenuity. What we aren't going to be doing anymore, which took an enormous amount of time, is imaging the helicopter flights. And that is what took away from our ability to continue with the science mission in one way or another. The other thing that we didn't do is move very far away from the helicopter, and we are going to move further away from the helicopter. In fact, the helicopter is moving further away from us on Flight 5 to go to a different location. And another thing that made it take more resources for the helicopter during the Ingenuity, the month of Ingenuity, was that we were not moving any mechanisms while we were communicating with the helicopter. And this could have been, some sols it was 2 hours, some sols it was 1 hour to get all this data that we got back, which is very useful. We weren't moving mechanisms because we were concerned about interference. We have worked towards a demo in our test beds, and we're doing this on Mars to start to confirm that we actually can move mechanisms while we're communicating with the helicopter. And that would mean we can do imaging and things like that that are not just the single images of the helicopter, but we can do science while we're getting images back from the helicopter. I think things like that are things that we're hopeful will work, but we're cautiously optimistic because we have not done those things fully yet. And so that's why we're looking at this every 30 sols to make sure we can still do the full operation. And we did coddle Mimi, the helicopter, and now we're taking some of that away. And the helicopter will have, Ingenuity will have a different risk posture in how the mission proceeds.
And, just to add to that, Jennifer, like one of the things we're doing with the helicopter going forward is helicopter has a base built-in hardware capability to just wake up every day at a given time, like 12:30 p.m. local, Mars Standard Time. And if it doesn't hear from the base station, it'll just go back to sleep and then wake up again the next day. And so we don't have to be, there is a mode where we don't have to be talking to it every day like we have been. So that's an example of one of the slower cadence capabilities that we're going to be exercising on the helicopter in this phase for the first time.
Thank you. And it looks like we have Steve Gorman from Reuters back on the line.
Yeah, hi. Thanks for hanging in with me. I appreciate it. You can hear me okay?
We can hear you. Thanks, Steve.
Okay. So I had 2 quick questions. One, in the last news briefing, Mimi Yang was talking about how she was emphasizing how they really intend to push the limits and push the envelopes on this helicopter, really push it to its limits. So it's suggesting, I think, in response to a question that in the end, for the sake of engineering, that Ingenuity would probably not meet with a really happy ending, and like it might, they're really going to try to push this thing till it couldn't function anymore, like maybe crash or something. And it sounds to me like with this new operational demo that maybe you're not going to push it. You said there's going to be some natural pushing of its limits by sending out farther and farther afield and so forth, but maybe you're not going to be really as aggressively pushing this aircraft's limits as much as you can. Is that correct? And during the operational demo. And secondly, what are some of the kinds of features on locations that you might be sending Ingenuity out to fly to inspect in surveillance that the rover could not access in the next 30 days?
Do you want to take a cut at that, Bob? Okay. Yes, we will always be pushing Ingenuity, but you are absolutely right in detecting that Ingenuity surprised us. It really did. With from the first flight to the third flight that we've had, it's been so perfect that our mindset went from, what are the uncertainties, like what are the differences that we're seeing with the flight at Mars versus the models that we had in our hands. And in the press conference, our mindset was, okay, we're going to see differences and we're going to have to update our models, and let's be updating and pushing the envelope as we're having to update the models. And the beautiful surprise here has been our models have not had to be touched. And they project all the way to the future missions of larger vehicle that we dream of building. And so that's been the good news. And you're absolutely right in detecting that shift now. And it's become an opportunity, right? With the opportunistic Perseverance rover is going to be nearby, and we get this chance to try out operational demonstrations. So two things are going to happen. We are going to start getting these products that will really feed forward to future missions using aerial platforms. And as we do that, we are going to have to push the envelope because of the unsurveyed terrain and more difficult terrain that simply the rover cannot get to. And so that will naturally push the limit. But you're right. I think I made the comment, I was pushing Hobart Grip, who was sitting right here and saying, come on, we got to go at least 600 meters, 800 meters. Kind of pushing for the model's sake. We've backed off a little bit just because we've had no surprises in the model. But don't worry, we will be pushing the vehicle because we'll be using it in very unpredicted ways. So
I'd like to add to that. Even on Flight 4, we have pushed some of the capability. We are flying faster than we flew on the third flight. We are flying for longer than our original design limit. We absorb all the waste heat in our motors in the motor itself. And originally we thought we would need to restrict that to about 1.5 minutes. Flight 4 is going to fly over 2 minutes on that motor, so we'll see how well that holds up. We're also currently, not optimized in our navigation system to fly over undulating terrains. We are sort of more of a flat plane, which is what the airfield and that flight zone was selected for. So we're going to be flying over terrain that will introduce a little bit more navigation error. We'll see how well that works. So it is being pushed, but it's being pushed, in a good way, in the sense that we know what the good performance has been, and we're pushing, cautiously, but it's still being pushed.
Thank you very much.
All right, and up next we have Jeff Faust from Space News.
Good morning. A question for the Ingenuity team, just to follow up on some of those earlier questions about pushing the limits of the helicopter. What sort of range do you expect to be able to get on these flights? How far downrange and back do you expect to go on some of these future flights beyond the 133 meters of Flight 4 today? Thanks.
I think total of about maybe 600 meters is not unreasonable. 2-minute flights at 5 meters per second is something that definitely is a possibility. That's probably where, we'll see how well it does on that one and see whether there's even more margin that we can, use for further flights. But that's probably a good place to think of a limit.
Thanks, Bob. And up next on the phone lines is John Wentz from Inverse.
Hi, I was just wondering what the transmission rate is between the helicopter and rover, and also, had you known this would be so successful, what kind of payload you might have wanted to be aboard the helicopter?
Well, we're transmitting data at about 100 kilobits per second, and we have 2 legs in that journey. One is from the helicopter to its base station, which is a radio link, and then there is another serial line between the base station that's mounted on the rover to the rover computer itself. And so it has to make those 2 hops. They're comparable speeds at what I indicated. And what was the second part of the question?
Have we known that?
Yeah, have you known that this was going to be as successful as it was? What kind of payloads, or what kind of payloads do you anticipate for your next helicopter?
In terms of my project manager, I had to fight to get the color camera onto the helicopter. So I'm very happy that we got that one little 1-gram payload, and we couldn't even call it a color science camera. We couldn't call it anything like that. We had to call it a return to Earth camera. So maybe Mimi wants to talk about payloads.
I confess, very focused, right? When we started this was about showing that we can fly a rotorcraft, right? We started with the question, we had a lot of people questioning, right? Very smart people. They said, really, is it possible? So yes, Bob, I confess, I was very obsessed with engineering data on how does a rotorcraft fly at Mars, right? Not just it flew, right? You can see it flying, but really getting the data back on how does it fly so that we can confirm our models. So yes, I was just obsessed with getting the engineering data back, and payloads, I admit, were in the back burner for me.
And Ken, would you like to contribute too?
Yeah. So I would suggest that the science team would love to see a capability that effectively takes the high-resolution cameras that we have on board the rover and puts them out over the landscape that we cannot drive to. And so the color images that we are getting, they're already are spectacular. We'll have to see if we can make out features that are of interest to the science team. But I think imagery is the key payload for this. For a future helicopter, is to produce high quality stereo imagery.
All right, thank you. And now we have a social media question coming in. Deanne on Facebook asks, how will this research impact human flight systems for Mars exploration in the future? Laura, would you like to take that?
Sure. So I think there's a lot of potential here, not just in supporting robotic missions, but, an aerial platform can do the same types of reconnaissance things that we're going to test in this operational phase. We can do the same types of things to support a human mission. The ability to go and fly to locations that perhaps are too far or too difficult to traverse for the human explorers to get to. Using that aerial platform to collect data there, or to scope out the path for the most effective and efficient traverse for our human explorers or for their vehicles that they're using to move around on the surface. And so I think there's a lot of similarities there between the types of things we're going to demonstrate in this operational phase that'll feed forward not just to the robotic, but also to human exploration.
All right, thank you, Lori. And we're going back to the phone lines now. We have Irene Klotz from Aviation Week.
Thanks very much. For Bob, did I hear you correctly say that the maximum flight durations is now moving from 90 seconds to possibly 2 minutes? And for Lori, is there a cost associated with this mission extension? And realistically, how soon do you think it'll be before a science rotorcraft would be flying on Mars? Thanks.
Yeah, to answer, yes, even Flight 4 is going to fly 2 minutes, and that's where we're comfortable right now.
Yes, and of course, everything comes with some cost. Nothing is ever free, but this is going to be at a very reduced capacity for the operations for the Ingenuity helicopter. As you heard Jennifer say, we're talking about, the cadence that has been an every 3-day flight cadence to perhaps, every couple of weeks flying. And so this is a much reduced operational scenario for the helicopter. And again, with a very, moving to this focus phase for the rover on the science, very minimal, low impact on the rover as well. So, nothing comes for free, but it will be very, very minimal. As far as the timeline for when we could see this, we've got an amazing community of scientists in planetary science that come up with great ideas that get proposed through our proposal processes. I fully expect to see something the next time we have an opportunity to get some clever ideas there. And you just never know what the next opportunity might be. But I know we'll see it.
Thank you, Lori. And up next, we have Stephen Clark from Spaceflight Now.
Thank you, Stephen Clark, Spaceflight Now. Just to follow up on Irene's question for Lori Glaze, is there any capacity or margin on the Mars sample return mission to put any sort of rotorcraft on board, or is that not something you're considering right now? And also, my phone dropped out briefly, so I apologize if I missed this from Ken Farley, or Jennifer Trosper. But how soon do you think it'll be before you can take your first sample with Perseverance? Thank you.
So I'll take the first question there. The Mars sample return mission is a very, very ambitious mission. Requiring multiple launches from Earth, requiring spacecraft from both the United States and from European Space Agency. And so it's very, very ambitious as it is. So I think it's really important that mission stay very focused on its mission to collect those samples that are going to be collected by the Perseverance rover. And again, with that, there's not a lot of room to add additional things onto that mission. It's already got an incredible scope and an incredible tasking just to bring those samples back. So I don't expect to see any additional flight elements going along with sample return.
And I can take the second part of the question. So the laundry list of things I talked about we need to do will take us a few months. So we expect to get our first sample in July, in the summer.
Thanks for your answers. Up next, we have Leo Enright from Irish Television.
Thanks very much, Raquel. I wanted to ask Ken Farley about that magnificent panorama that he showed us in the context of the short to medium term science plan. Am I looking at this correctly when I think that the large outcrop in the middle of the picture is the Katmai outcrop, the Delta remnant, putatively? Is that correct?
It's called Kodiak.
Sorry, again?
That is a Delta remnant. Right in the almost dead center of the image is the Delta remnant that we call Kodiak. And we've obtained some really spectacular images that are up on our raw site already.
And if I could ask then, obviously your short-term target at the end of your ice cream scoop red drawing is obviously then that outcrop at the extreme left, which would be at the bottom of Big Bend. Do you think that might be a Delta remnant, or are you ruling that out?
Yeah, this is a really good question. The end of this red zone here, the area that we will execute our campaign in, was intentionally drawn to allow the team that is going to create the campaign. That's the way we do it. We're going to task a small group of scientists to prepare a plan for what we might do within this red zone. They're going to be able to choose what we do. And the feature all the way in the southwest corner is a small, about a 10-meter high hill that we call Pilot Pinnacle. And it could be a Delta remnant. It might be something else. It looks different than Kodiak. Just even in the high-rise images that we're looking at here, the orbital images, it looks different. So we're not really sure what that is. The most likely explanation is that it is a Delta remnant, but it could also be something else. Could be a surprise.
Raquel, I had a follow-up if there's time.
Yes, there is.
Just for Jennifer, I was curious. You mentioned the microphone characterization test and some video that you shot. I'm just wondering, was that the mystery video on Sol 67 where absolutely nothing happened?
It could very well be. I'm not sure I am that familiar with the mystery video, but it could have been during that test, yes.
Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Leo. Work on getting you that answer. And up next, we have Rick Lovett from Cosmos Magazine.
Yes, thank you. My basic question is, so flights 4 and 5 are the extended mission for the first 30 days, or could there be a 6th?
Oh, the flight 4 and 5 we're transitioning into this operational demo phase. So we should view them as operational demo phase, and it is the first time we are flying ahead of the rover. Ingenuity is flying ahead of the rover, surveying a terrain that we haven't seen before, and picking from it and transferring. And then from then on, for flight 5, Ingenuity will leave the current airfield, the Wright Brothers field, and Ingenuity will permanently transfer to the new airfield. So from there on, yes, the intention is for flight 6, and 7, so on, working together with Perseverance operations and science perspective to figure out, what operational products and scenarios that we want to explore.
Thanks. Well, I can follow up. That means there could be in this 30 days more than 2 flights. There could be 3 or 4.
Yes, we're looking every 2-3 week cadence.
We'll do flights 4 and 5, and then we'll probably have 1 or 2 flights after that throughout May.
Thank you.
Up next on the phone lines is Ken Kramer from Space Up Close.
Thank you for taking my question, and congratulations on fantastic results so far. I'm wondering with the color camera, since you're going to stay aerial for a while, would it be possible to do stereo imaging with that? One of you just mentioned that a little bit, taking stereo images. If you can keep it up, turn it a little bit, is that possible? And can you get any science at all out of that color camera? Thanks.
Yeah, I can take that. Yes, so we can do stereo, and it was considered as a possible, demonstration. It's just that we have a little bit of our timing on scheduling the color camera on the helicopter is not as precise and as carefully controlled as we can do with the navigation camera. And since the flight force objective is really to find the new landing field, the nadir-pointed black and white camera will seem to be better for that. But yes, at some future point in time, we can definitely do wide baseline stereo imaging using our color camera.
Thank you. And we also have some social media questions coming in. Fred on Facebook asks, are you going to make a map out of Ingenuity's pictures?
So I can take that too. Yes, there is actually a mapping team that works closely with all the Perseverance images. Everything that they do, there is a whole pipeline of processing which results in map-type products that come out of the other end. And we have been feeding our images from our cameras to that same team. And they have been building up, and they're getting ready, in fact, to build this digital elevation map, which is that first product from this long transect. And there are other map products that they can do. They have the good models of both our cameras. So as long as they get their images, which we hand on to them, they can process it, and they will prioritize how they process it depending upon what the need is.
Thanks. Another social media question. That Guy Crafter on Twitter asks, will the data from Ingenuity be useful for the Dragonfly mission on Titan, or are the environments too different for it to be relevant? Lori?
Sure. So I'm sure that Bob and Mimi can also say, but the teams have already started talking to each other. And yes, the environments are very different, but we are talking about remotely operating a rotorcraft in another environment. And so I think there's a lot of information that can feed forward about how we're operating this rotorcraft on Mars that can be helpful to the Dragonfly team as they develop their rotorcraft, which of course will fly on Titan. As I said, I believe the teams are already speaking to each other about how they can how the Dragonfly team can build on what has been learned from Ingenuity.
You want to weigh in too, Mimi or Bob?
Oh, okay. Yeah. So one aspect, I think, Bob and I, in our journey going from inventing the helicopter, in parallel, we found ourselves inventing the verification and validation approach. How do you test a rotorcraft that's going to fly on another planetary target, right? How do you test on Earth? And that itself has been a journey. So, for example, that is one area that we can really contribute to future aerial vehicles for other planetary targets. And yes, we are in communication. In fact, Michael Rixkevich was our independent review chair for the Ingenuity's entire development phase. So definitely connected. And the second aspect that Ingenuity can contribute to future aerial platform missions is how to operate it, right? At these large distances, how do we operate it from Earth? And that's also a very highly valuable information. And then, of course, with the latest now, the opportunity that we're getting in the operational demonstration phase, now we can go a step further. We will be looking at potential use cases and potential products that can really help operations as well as science exploration aspects of it. And we're very proud to be able to help future missions that way.
Thank you. Another question coming in from Twitter. Kumar asks, how long, theoretically, can it stay afloat in the air with its batteries fully charged by the solar panels? Assume they're talking about Ingenuity here.
Yeah, so our constraint is not the energy in the battery. We actually reserve most of that energy for staying warm through the night. The constraint really is a thermal constraint on how long we can operate the motors. Since we were a technology demonstration designed for short flights, all the waste heat in the motor actually gets absorbed in the motor, and the motor temperature rises by about 1 degree centigrade per every second of operation. So we have to manage that, and that's the ultimate limit that keeps us, puts a constraint on the time. It's not so much the energy in the battery. We have plenty of energy that if we wanted to fly longer, but it's purely a thermal temperature constraint.
Thanks. And then Arno on YouTube asks, how excited are you guys on a scale from 1 to 10 now that Ingenuity will keep flying?
10.5.
I don't know. I think I saw Mimi jump up and down the chair when Ingenuity flew that first time, and I'm not quite sure I can quite get that energy level, but it's been awesome. It's been awesome. So I don't want to put a number to it.
Sounds like it's off the charts for you, Mimi. And then our final social media question. Charles on Facebook asks, the human race at its best when it is trying to achieve the impossible. How can the public help NASA continue this endeavor?
That's a great question. Part of what we do with everything we're doing in NASA is to inspire. We want to learn, we want to understand within planetary, we want to understand the solar system and all of the planets and bodies that make up our solar system. But then we want to take that learning and what we've learned and inspire the public and everyone around. And so I think from the public side, the support of everything that we're doing, the incredible support we've seen from the public of both Perseverance and Ingenuity has just been absolutely wonderful. We're just so thankful and so happy that we can take the whole world along with us on this incredible journey to explore Jezero Crater.
Great, thank you so much. Now, if members of the media have additional questions, please call JPL's Digital News and Media Office. We'll also continue to answer social media questions online. Thank you for all your questions, and thank you to our panelists for joining us today. To learn more about the Ingenuity helicopter, visit go.nasa.gov/Ingenuity. To learn more about the Perseverance rover, visit mars.nasa.gov/Perseverance. There you can also see the latest images coming down from the rover. And if you're on social media, join the conversation about the helicopter by following @NASAJPL and use the hashtag MarsHelicopter. You can join the conversation about the rover by following @NASAPersevere. Thanks for watching.